Hello you lovely lot, my name is Max, welcome back to my YouTube channel and another Nottingham Forest match preview where today we are discussing Forest's upcoming away trip to Old Trafford to take on Manchester United, our first game back in the league since the World Cup postponement. If you're new around here, these videos go as following. We start by giving some context to our opposition before discussing some of the key stats and details surrounding their team. We then spend some time talking about the tactics, followed by my scoreline predictions and the outro for the video. So if you do enjoy this kind of stuff, don't forget to drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell so you don't miss a single video. With that being said, let's start talking about Erik ten Hag's Manchester United. So as we usually do, we'll be starting by providing a little bit of context to this Manchester United side, discussing how their season thus far is going. And I've got to say it's been pretty decent, a mixed season but edging towards decent, as Manchester United at the time of recording are currently on a 12-game unbeaten run that stretches all the way back to their 6-3 loss to Manchester City in the Manchester Derby back at the beginning of October. So a really good run of form, although it doesn't really count going into the second half of the season, seeing as we missed a month for the World Cup. And it's absolutely worth noting this is despite the fact they had a torrid start to the season, losing their opening two games against Brentford and Brighton on an aggregate scoreline of 6-1. So I really think that Erik ten Hag deserves a bit of credit for turning the season around and making it look like a potential Champions League push for the Red Devils. Of course, Ten Hag, like I say, deserves a lot of the credit for the turnaround from the beginning of the season, but I think some of their new signings also deserve some credit. I think Lisandro Martinez and Casemiro have been fantastic, adding some real quality and experience to the spine of that team. Of course, Antony looks like a really promising prospect on the right hand side of that attack, and players like Diogo Dalot and Marcus Rashford really earning contract extensions and really feeling like new signings with the vigour that they've brought back into the team. And as someone who lives within earshot of Old Trafford, it really feels like the mood at the club has turned around recently, with the Glazers announcing they're looking at potentially selling the club, Cristiano Ronaldo departing the club, of course, during a real sort of black cloud period for the team. And I think it does look like things are starting to improve and galvanise into what could be a really good team in 2 or 3 years' time. So that being said, let's start dissecting some of the key stats surrounding this team, how their attack and their defence measure out amongst their compatriots in the Premier League at the moment. So when we take a look at the stats in a general sense, they seem to be pretty middling in specific areas, particularly their attack. United are 8th and 11th respectively in the Premier League this season for goals scored and expected goals generated. We can flip things the other round and say they are just outside the top 4 for shots per 90 with 13.5. And the last thing I kind of want to touch on in a general sense with Manchester United's attack is the fact that they are really struggling to generate these high quality, high value opportunities. If we take a look at proximity to goal of shots, they are the team taking their shots on average from the furthest distance from goal. I think Ronaldo's departure from the team will bring this down slightly, but I do think it's really worth bearing in mind they potentially could be a team that struggled to break down these low defensive blocks, something that Forest have done pretty well, to be fair, in recent weeks in the Premier League. So it's definitely something that we could do to frustrate them, sitting in that deep block and breaking out on the counter. Conceding goals has been a bit of a problem for Manchester United thus far this season. They've conceded the 10th most goals in the Premier League at the time of recording, from the 4th fewest expected goals. And what that might suggest to you is that David De Gea, or the goalkeeping position, is potentially a weak area. So I want to spend some time investigating whether this is actually the case or there's external factors at play. It certainly looks like the stats support the idea that David De Gea is the defensive issue potentially in this Manchester United team. He currently has a save percentage of just 66%. This is the lowest of his Manchester United career thus far, and actually around the same as Dean Henderson, who of course is on loan from Manchester United this season, suggesting that they're performing at a similar level. And that's really the area where David De Gea has excelled at in years gone by. Although not the best of his feet, he's always been renowned for his shot stopping ability, his best seasons being up in the 80s, high 80s for shot saving percentage. This season down at 66%. And I do think that is a big reason as to why Manchester United's defence has struggled at times, although I think injuries and other things are potentially factors. However, I'm going to flash a graph up on screen now showing the the trend of the expected goals conceded by Manchester United thus far this season. And what you will see is that the trend is going in a downward direction. As the season progresses, Manchester United have been conceding less goals on expected goals. And I think this is a really good way of judging the fact that although they have not had the best defensive season, it is improving week on week compared to the beginning of the season against Brighton and Brentford, where they had some absolute howlers. And in fact, you can use this trend in the opposite direction, looking at the expected goals that they generate at the other end of the pitch. And as you can see by the other graph put up on screen, the trend is again going in a positive direction. They are generating more expected goals per match as the season progresses. And as we'll find by the end of the season, I'd imagine that they're a team that are generally a good defensive team and a good attacking team at the same time, as Ten Hag gets his principles in there. So with that being said, let's spend a brief amount of time talking about Manchester United's tactics under Erik Ten Hag. I think they're really interesting, one of the more interesting teams to look at in the Premier League this season. So let's spend some time on it and go into that section. So we've got Manchester United up on the board in the red, and generally under Erik Ten Hag, they have preferred to play a similar shape and formation to that they were playing under his predecessor, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, a variation on a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3, depending on the opposition and the personnel available. Now, to talk about Ten Hag's tactics this season, I think it's important to look at what they were doing last season. And United last season were a really good, or at their best at least, were a really good counter-attacking unit, sat back into a nice deep shape, won the ball back, and looked to exploit the wide areas using the pace and direct attacking qualities they had from the likes of Rashford, Martial, Cavani when he was there. Really good movement, really good running, and lots of energy in the final third to get goals on the counter. The problem, of course, that you can encounter from this, particularly as an elite side, as many people and commentators have pointed out, is that you can play against teams who are inferior to you, who'll just give you the ball and expect you to play through them. And that is particularly hard when you're a team set up for more of a counter-attacking game. It often found them sort of in these positions more advanced up the field, where they didn't really know what to do with the ball. They were just sort of passing it around quite a lot, looking into the wide areas, recycling it back through the central areas. As teams sat back in deep blocks, so you think of like Burnley's, teams like that sit back in really good mid-low blocks, United would find it really hard to break them down and would get picked off on the counter-attack due to the weakness in the spine of their team. And this is where Erik Ten Hag has come in and I think personally improved things in both facets. He has been pragmatic in the sense of he has allowed his team to soak up pressure and counter-attack as and when it's needed, but he's also given his team the base to be able to play around the back. He's brought in players like Casemiro and Lisandro Martinez, who are really good ball-playing players who can receive the ball, turn, get the ball into the final third, and progressively they tend to look like a better team, allowing players like Bruno Fernandes, Marcus Rashford to really make their impact in the final third. Of course, there has been some teething problems. We haven't seen it be necessarily the most subtle or fruitless or flawless, whatever you want to say, transitions into this type of system. I think the Brentford game is a really good example of this. If we look at one of Brentford's goals, often at the beginning of the season, Christian Eriksen was playing as the pivot at the bottom of the midfield, receiving the ball out from the back. And we were seeing Brentford do a really good job getting Jensen into these areas to press onto Eriksen. He's obviously not used to playing as the single pivot at the base of a midfield, which is why players like Casemiro have been brought in. And eventually we will see this tend to be an upgrade. We'll see this improve as the season progresses, United's ability to play out from the back and be more of a structured possession team. But like I say, against Brentford and on a couple of other occasions this season, we have seen them struggle when they've received the ball from deep. Players like Eriksen dropping in between the lines to pick up the ball and them getting in, picked off them and eventually transitioned on. That was a very long-winded way of explaining things. I think it makes sense though. United are still playing a transitional style at times. They're trying to play more possession-based. It has been not necessarily the most seamless of transitions, but they have done a really good job at trying to adapt, and Ten Hag deserves credit for that. So in terms of a more personnel-based system, I'm just going to quickly breeze through the positions here. You've usually got a defence of Martinez and Varane. Of course, they were playing in the World Cup final last weekend, so I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't feature against us. I know Casemiro played at centre-back in the Carabao Cup earlier in the week against Burnley. Wouldn't be surprised if something similar happened against Forest. Luke Shaw is getting lots of width, lots of aggressive width up and down this left-hand side. If you look at touch maps for Manchester United, the most dominant areas of their pitch are the left-hand wide zones, which is where Shaw really loves to operate, and he's really important for progression and build-up for this Manchester United team. Dalot, who's been really good at right back this season, tucks in a little bit more, a little less adventurous, really good securing possession, helps progress play and keep things ticking along. Casemiro is the anchor man. He can drop between the centre-backs if needed. He can also sit in a deeper position. Christian Eriksen sort of working around him, helping do a bit of defensive work and pressing, but generally being in there to play as like a deep-lying anchor man, connecting player, setting the tempo, distributing from deep, that kind of thing. Whilst Bruno Fernandes plays off the right, he can play off the left, being this sort of pragmatic, attacking number 10 kind of player who gets some buzzers about, creates loads of chances, takes lots of shots. He's going to be a really big problem against us, I think, and definitely someone that we should stick someone like Yates or O'Brien on to just mark out the game. Of course, then Luke Shaw's left-sided, high aggressive width allows players like Marcus Rashford to drift inside into the half space. Rashford has also played as a number 9 this season, but can play off the left as well. Whilst Anthony, or whoever's on the right-hand side, is a little bit more of a traditional chalk on the boots kind of winger. Gets lots of width in this team, so you're stretching the opposition as much as possible along this side of the pitch. Anthony does a really good job of that. I think he's a really good, wide, traditional winger. And the number 10, or number 9, sorry, occupies in and around the box. Obviously, someone like Martial, Rashford's played there, Ronaldo was playing there when he was at the club. There was a real lack of quality in that position, I think, and it's definitely an area where United will probably be looking to improve in the summer. So how can Forest beat this Manchester United team? I've painted a picture of them being a really good unit of players, really talented individuals playing under a really good system under Erik ten Hag. I do think, though, they possess some weaknesses, quite specific weaknesses for this match. I think the main one is that both Varane and Lisandro Martinez are potentially unlikely to play in the match. We still don't know. I'm recording this before the match, obviously quite a few days before the match, so we're not 100% sure if they're playing. If not, there is quite a drop in quality in that position, and I think a real lack of pace in that back line if someone like Martinez or Varane isn't playing. So I do think it's going to be important that we get players like Awoniyi, Gibbs White, Lingard, whoever's playing. I'm just going to push the back line up for Manchester United. Get them really onto the shoulder of the last man in this Manchester United team. Brennan, Taiwo, they're players who are really good at playing off the shoulder of the last man, running in behind, getting lots of pace and width in behind the defence. I think that really suits their style and could potentially be a really good way we could punish them. So in terms of the scoreline, I find this one really hard to predict, more so than recent games that we've played. I think Manchester United are a team that can either come to you or you can go to them and they'll turn you over 4-0 like a Man City or an Arsenal, or it could be like the game against Liverpool where they don't turn up, the system isn't really working, we get a lucky goal and we pick up a win. I think a point would be a really good point. I think it'd be a really good away point at Old Trafford against Manchester United. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw as like an ideal scoreline. I'm not naive. I don't think we're going to pick up the 3 points, but I think a point would suffice to say be a good yield from going away to Manchester United and hopefully allow us to maybe even get out of the relegation zone come the new year. Of course, though, let me know your scoreline predictions and your thoughts on the match in the comments section down below. It's great to be back making the match previews after a little break for the World Cup, and I'm ready and raring to go for both the January transfer window for the scout reports and the match previews during the second half of the season. This video is coming out on the 26th on Boxing Day, I think, so I think we play on the 27th, so I probably won't see you before then, so have a good Christmas, have a lovely new year as well, and I'll see you bright and early at the beginning of January for some tactics videos, some more of these match previews, and of course the scout reports coming back at you. With that being said though, thanks for watching, I will catch you later.